So I was inspired to write poetry. I feel like it came out of a need. I really have always loved writing. I loved writing longer stories, short stories, and I just felt like I had a part of myself that I wanted to share with the world. And so, having moved to New Mexico for the first time from Malawi, I was really missing home, and writing has always been something that the thing that I fell back on and my comfort. So it was mostly for me at first. It was a very personal thing. And then eventually I started sharing with the world. When I'm writing poetry, in my darkest moments, I'm literally bawling as I write this work. But at the end of the day, it feels like a deep, sigh. So getting it out is therapeutic in a sense. And it's easier to, because I had mentioned earlier, writing has always been my comfort. It's easier to write from such a dark place because I know at the end of that process, I'll feel so much better. And I would have put down my emotions in a certain way, and it's something that I can reflect on later, like, okay, this is what you went through, but you're okay, and writing helped you. Writing from a joyous place is much more difficult. It's hard for somebody like me who's often, because of my insecurities and my trauma and so forth, who's often not felt worthy of joy. And so when I am in a joyous position and being a slightly superstitious type of individual, I think like if I sit down and write about it, maybe that moment will go away, or maybe I won't have any joy after that. So it's quite difficult because I'm trying to keep everything secretive and just be in the moment and just be happy and keep it for myself. Because as a writer, I often worry about how much of my life am I sharing, and so the joyous moments are a little bit more sacred than the darker moments. Yeah. So you want to know a little bit about my books. Soft Magic is a short collection of poetry, and I think I've been working on it for so many years, probably over 4 years. But what Soft Magic's main themes are self-love and growth and just celebrating Blackness, celebrating your womanhood. Nectar was my second collection of poetry, and it's more about finding your voice. So you know that you're all these amazing things. You know that you should invest more in loving yourself. What are you going to do with that? How are you going to help other people now that you've discovered you are a someone, which Soft Magic teaches you? How do you become someone of impact, somebody who influences, somebody who can go into a space and own that space? Because when I was writing Nectar, I was in my master's program. I was really afraid. I'm in Oxford the first time, really afraid, felt like I didn't have anything to say, felt like I should just sit back. But I was like, no, you're a storyteller. Your story needs to be told. So Nectar is just really, as a woman, what are you going to do? How are you going to share your experiences? How are you going to make an impact? And there's a lot of poems where I just drag people like, speak when you're in spaces. And I mean it, because someone who's struggled with shyness her whole life, I understand the importance of actually saying something. I hate being that person who's at the end of a class, at the end of a presentation, wishes, oh, I wish I put my hand up and said that. I wish I did this and that. And then women are constantly, thought of as we're just silent in these spaces. But these spaces are often male dominated, and we're not used to having our voices be valid in such, or welcome in such spaces. So for me, Nectar was like that push to actually activate yourself as a human being. Go ahead and own a space, and don't be so apologetic all the time about being all these glorious, amazing things, And so A Fire Like You, I think, is which is my third collection of poetry. It's just me being a little bit more, even more confident than I was in Nectar. Just being a little bit more open about different topics that I thought I didn't properly have the courage to address earlier. It's just my most honest work ever. and it shows my development as a writer, like how I've really come into my own as a writer, and how I'm just celebrating the process of storytelling to the best of my ability, to actually openly share things that I was afraid to previously. Being an African woman, I thought that I had no right to discuss certain things. Discussing certain things would bring shame, and fear are things that we are constantly fed as women. And I'm at a point in my life where I'm like, I don't want to eat that. Like, do not serve me shame and fear. Do not try and silence me as a woman. I would rather just be out there and bold and just happy and living my life to the best of my ability. So yeah, that's what a fire like. I feel like everyone who reads the book should step away with that feeling of just absolute pride in who they are. As well as just, we need to get a little bit more honest. And I think Soft Magic and a Nectar, and then when you read a fire, like, you kind of have that push to be truly your authentic self. At least I hope my work does that for people. Well, I would say pour more into your work, trust the process. I feel like I wasn't a believer in my own writing for the longest time, and this deep, like, rooted insecurity kept me away from so many opportunities to share myself, to be open, to be vulnerable, to make friends, to make supporters, to make family. So I would say focus on your work. I think writing is a calling that I was running away from for the longest time, and it kept coming back to me. It kept on filling me and making me happy again when I was down, or reminding me of sad moments. But it was always teaching me new stuff, teaching me new ways to see the world, and I didn't pay enough attention to it because I thought you can't be a creative and you can't be successful as a creative. So I'll definitely tell myself, a younger version, Upile, don't be silly. Like, writing is what you're meant to do, and do it fully. To sit down and do the work, I think often the questions that I do get are about, like, social media and how do you get a bigger audience and so forth. But I'm like, are you sitting down and actually writing? Once you do get that audience, it's great. It's all good and great. The audience will come if your work is good enough, hopefully. But are you sitting down and actually feeding your craft? Are you giving it your all? Are you not just treating it as a hobby, treating it as a potential job for yourself? Because for me, writing is a career, the same way everybody else wakes up and goes to work. I wake up and write, or I write at night. Like, I have a routine. So you have to get into the habit of actually truly believing in your work and in the potential for you to be a published or otherwise kind of author. So start writing first. Secondly, share. I think the mistake we often make is that we are so protective of our work that we fail to share it with other people for editing purposes. And I think I would have benefited from having someone read over my first work. We're as creatives, we're so protective over our work. We're so afraid of criticism that we often fail to deliver the best versions of ourselves because we didn't have the guts to say, actually, you know what, slow down, I need help. So and so, can you help me with this? Can you read over this line? Does it make sense to you in your head? So that's my second piece of advice. Third, just get involved with other writers. Sit down somewhere, find yourself a book club, a writing club, some sort of club, and it's always better experiencing something if you're experiencing with other people, especially the whole writing process, because you can talk about writer's block, you can talk about, oh my gosh, I want to work on this thing, I want to work on that thing, and then maybe there too you can also find out about social media and so forth. But that's not the most important part. The most important part is actually investing in your work.